Hello everyone, welcome back to Jessie Kate Creates. I'm Jessica, and today's video is kind of going to be two parts. We're going to do a quick tutorial of how I make some galaxy backgrounds, and then I'm going to show you some of the cards I made using those backgrounds. This technique is based on a tutorial from Yana Smakula. I will have her original video linked in the description box below, and I encourage you to go check it out and see how she made these backgrounds. So to get started, what I have here is a piece of photo paper that's 4 by 6. This is not regular cardstock. Like I said, it's photo paper like you would use for, printing your own photographs at home. And it leaves a really cool look because the paper is shiny. So what I've done, I've pulled in a couple different inks in some light blues, dark blues, purples, yellows, and oranges, and I'm just kind of randomly adding it to the background of my card. You'll notice the ink blending here is not smooth. It doesn't need to be. So if you struggle with ink blending and you get a lot of harsh lines, that's totally okay. It works for this technique. Something else I noticed worked really well for me. Instead of trying to blend the ink on in circular motions, I just kind of press and turn the ink blender without moving it too much, and that made it easier for me to get the ink on, but of course experiment and see what works best for you. So hopefully you saw there, I put the lighter inks and random splotches all over the card, and now I'm taking my dark blue ink and just kind of filling in those holes so that, we'll start to get that universe look. And when you're doing this, you're probably going to think to yourself, oh my gosh, this looks like a hot mess. I've totally messed this up. And this is one of those techniques where I feel like you just have to keep going. It's going to look really bad before it looks really good. So you can see here, I'm just going in and adding more of the dark ink. I decided I wanted there to be more purple in this one, so I'm going in and filling in some of those spaces with purple. Something else I'm doing, sometimes I'm putting my dark inks completely over my lighter colors. Sometimes I leave a little bit of the lighter color to show through. This is one of those techniques where really you just have to play around with it and see what you like the look of. I've done these before where I use really dark inks, and I'll show you some of those backgrounds in a little bit. And I've done it like this where I use lighter inks. They just give you different looks. So have fun, play around with these, and figure out what you like the look of. So there's the first background all done and ready to go, and you can see it's shiny because, like I said, we did this on photo paper. So the next step, I made multiple backgrounds because if I have my supplies out, usually I will make more than one of something. So at this point, I've taken some of the backgrounds, I've put them into an old shoebox that I use as a splat box, and we're going to add some stars to these galaxies. And the way we're going to do that is with some white acrylic paint. So I'm just adding that onto a stamp block, and then I'm adding in a little bit of water. I just keep clean tap water in a little bottle on my desk just for things like this. And I'm just mixing it into the acrylic paint until it's nice and loose so that I can splatter this paint. So there are a couple different ways that you can splatter paint, and you just have to play around with it and see what you like. I usually start by tapping my brush against the side of the box, and that just gives me some really big splatters. I like to have a few of those in my backgrounds. And I just kind of do that until I like the way it looks, and then I'll move on to doing some smaller splatters. And the way I do those, you'll see here in just a second, I just pull the paint to the edge of the block and flick it off of the block onto the backgrounds like you see me doing here. This project is really fun because I feel like making these backgrounds is really just about playing. Each one is going to look different. You can't control them too much, so just play around and have fun with it. Like I said, there might be points where you think that you've messed these up or that they don't look right, but just keep going, and by the time you get to the end, I promise you it's going to look like a galaxy. This is a very forgiving technique I would encourage you to try. Right, so now let me show you what the backgrounds look like once they've been splattered. Ta-da! Look at that. How cool does that look? And I think what I really like about this is once you add the splatters, the harsh blending really doesn't show as much. It kind of looks like it's meant to be that way. Like if you look really close here, you can see all that harsh blending, but I don't think it looks bad. I think it makes it look more like a galaxy actually. So I think that really works in your favor if you're not very great at ink blending. You don't need to get it really smooth with these because that splatter kind of fixes everything once you do it. Here's another one. So cool. I love how fun these turn out. And then the last one. So cool. They just look like nebulas or something. I love this. Now I will show you, for these, you saw me use some really bright colors. So you can see that these backgrounds are pretty vibrant. I've made these before using darker colors, and I'll show you one of those backgrounds. And the colors here aren't quite as vibrant, but I think that's okay. I think it still looks like a universe. Here, I think I used like yellows and oranges, dark greens, some dark purples and pinks. And you can see it definitely gives you a different look. You can also see with this one, I did a bunch more splattering than I did on these. But I will say, for all the cards I'm about to show you, I actually used these darker backgrounds. And I'm really hoping this just shows you that no matter what you have in your stash, no matter if you have bright inks, darker inks, you can make these work with whatever you have in your stash. You can still make these really cool galaxy background cards. One other thing I will note, if you notice that ink is rubbing off of the panel and onto your fingers, you can go ahead and seal these. And to do that, I just use this Kmar varnish. I don't know if that's exactly what this is made for, but it does kind of put a seal on it so that the ink isn't going to rub off on your fingers. If that's not a problem for you, you don't have to do this extra step. I do like to do it because I don't want my recipients to get, ink all over their fingers when they're looking at or handling their card. I just go outside and spray this on the cards and let them dry. Super simple, but like I said, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. Okay, so now that we've seen these backgrounds, let me go ahead and show you some of the cards that I've created with them. And remember, for all of these cards, I did use the darker backgrounds. So this is one of the first cards that I created with this. I love that because we used photo paper, you get that really shiny, glossy look on the backgrounds. So for this card, all I did, I have a side folding black A2 card base. I went ahead and cut the galaxy panel down to 3 3/4 by 5, and that just gives us a nice border all the way around the card. And I did pop that layer up on foam tape, which I hope you can see right there. And then for the sentiment on this card, I kept it relatively simple, at least simple for me at least. So I took the Altenew Wish Big stamp set. This is just a super tiny stamp set I've had in my stash for a couple of years. I really enjoy it. And I went ahead, I found a vellum circle I found a circle die cut that was big enough to fit this sentiment. And I went ahead, I white heat embossed this onto the vellum. Hope you can see that there. And then I used the circle to cut it out. Really simple. So you could do that with any sentiment that you have. You don't have to cut it in a circle. You could use a paper trimmer to cut it into a rectangle. I'll show you a card like that in just a moment. Now I did pop this layer up on foam tape as well. You might be able to see that there. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't difficult, but it was kind of a lot of work to cut down my foam tape into tiny little bits that would fit behind the lettering here. I think it looks really cool because it adds a lot of dimension to this card, but it is a lot of work. So if you don't want to do that, skip that step and just put, wet glue directly behind it and glue it down that way. That works. That works too. Now to finish off the inside of this card, I just took a leftover strip of this background and I adhered it to the bottom. I did do a white panel. You guys know I like to put panels inside my cards, but especially if you're using a dark cardstock, you need a panel on the inside for the recipient to write a message, or for you to write a message to the recipient. This sentiment that I used inside the card is from the Crafter's Companion Happy Birthday Wishes. This is a large stamp set that I picked up a few years ago at TJ Maxx, but again, any sentiment you have in your stash will work for this. And so that's the card. Wish big, have a happy birthday. Really like that one. The next card I made, this one does not use any die cutting. So for this card, this is another A2 sized card. And I did use a black card base again here. Now for this one, I did a little bit of matting. So I cut my galaxy panel down to 3 3/4 by 5. But this time I also added a vellum mat, and that vellum mat is just 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And I liked the border that this added to this card. So I adhered those two together with some tape runner, and then I mounted those with foam tape onto the card base. Hopefully you can see that there, that it has popped up just a little bit. For the sentiment on this card, I actually don't know where this, who this sentiment is by. I picked this up at a craft thrift store, but I really liked this sentiment. I thought it's funny. The Earth is 4.5 million years old. Relatively speaking, this makes you a spring chicken. So sorry, I don't know who this stamp set is by or what it's called. If you recognize it, please let me know in the comments if you know that information, because I would love to know. But so I went ahead, I took my sentiment and I white embossed it onto a piece of vellum. And then I used some double-sided adhesive sheets to adhere 2 pieces of vellum together. So this is 2 layers of vellum right here. And that's also how I adhered it to the card. So there's no dimension here, but I did use 2 pieces of vellum just to make it easier to read the sentiment on this card. And I think I cut this down to a 2 inch by 2 inch square. The size doesn't really matter. It just needs to be big enough to fit whatever sentiment it is that you are using. You might also notice for the background on this one, I leaned more heavily into like the pinks and the purples. So this is very kind of like purpley pinkish one, but I really like the look of that. And then to finish off the inside of this card, I went ahead and stamped the other half of the sentiment onto the inside of the card. And then once again, I just added a little scrap of the leftover paper to the bottom of the card. And I thought that finished this one off very nicely as well. So for the final card that I made using this stamp set, here we go. For this one, the background is a lot smaller. And that's because at the time I was running out of panels. So in order to make my panels stretch a little bit more, I cut it in half, just like this, because these panels are roughly 4 by 6. So if you cut them down, you kind of get like a 3 by 4, which is great for A2 card making. That's why so many cut aparts are 3 by 4. So yes, and you'll see here, this one also has a vellum matte layer as well. So this panel is actually 2 3/4 by 4 inches. And the vellum mat is 3 inches by 4 1/4 inches. Once again, I adhered those together and I popped them up onto my black A2 card base. So you can see there it's kind of popped up. One thing I did do, I embossed, since so much of the background was showing on this card, or so much of the card base was showing, I wanted to add a little bit of texture and interest to it. So I looked through my stash and I had this Spellbinders, I don't know what it's called. That's, I guess, the code number. But I found this embossing folder that made some stars, and I thought that was perfect since these are universe cards. So I embossed the background, or this is just the front of the card base. I went ahead and embossed it so there'd be a little interest there. And then I popped this up onto it. Now this sticker, this is from a Dollar Tree like set of puffy, well, not puffy stickers, but like cardstock stickers. And I got this years ago. It was when I was like hoarding my supplies and not really using them. I thought these were really cute. I picked them up and then they've just been sitting in my stash. So I wanted to use them up and I thought this was perfect. And for the sentiment, this is just a silver foiled happy birthday sentiment that I made myself using a laser printer and a Mink Hot foil machine. So that is the front of this card. And then to finish off the inside, I just did the same thing, a little strip of the remaining galaxy background on the bottom. And for the sentiment inside this card, again, I used my Mink Hot foil machine and a laser printer to go ahead and make my own foiled sentiment. And I thought wishing you a stellar birthday was cute since this was a galaxy themed card. So you can see these 3 cards that I made, they're all kind of similar, but all kind of different. And I hope that encourages you that it doesn't matter, you know, what supplies you have in your stash. You can make something like this too. You just have to look through and kind of see what works and what kind of do you prefer and what gives you the look that you're going for. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you guys give this technique a try. It's really fun and relatively simple. If you do make some cards with this, go ahead and tag me in your creations over on Instagram. I'll have my Instagram linked down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. That helps other people find this video and find my channel. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can always see when I put out a new video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!